Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
Hey, good morning, everyone. A little bit of music here from Joe and Woody and the boys of the road crew. Start our morning with some road trip inspiration. Hey, Wade, good morning. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be a part of the podcast.
Oh, thank you, sir. This is my version of Mayberry television. I'm basically modern Amish, and I figure this out as I go. But I was so great to talk with you yesterday, and the AAA Road Fest in Tulsa has intrigued me ever since I saw its launch, and it got me really excited about this. We're going to do it again this year in Tulsa on what dates?
Yeah, we're June 23rd, 24th, and 25th. That's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
It's basically a virtual Route 66 experience, if you will, I suppose, huh?
Yeah, we really tried to put something together that had a little bit of something for everybody, and that's always a little bit dangerous in the event business. But I feel like we did a pretty good job. You got to have a car show. There's no way to separate that history of Route 66 with classic cars, and so we've got about a 250 car classic car show that takes place in the downstairs of the expo building, and then upstairs we have family activities. We've got an 18-hole Route 66 themed miniature golf course. We've got virtual reality. We have a Pinewood Derby racing area, interactive art classes. And so really trying to, make it possible for a family to come and spend a pretty good part of the day and have everybody be able to have a good time and find something to attach to. And then right in the middle of all of this stuff that's going on, we have what we call the journey. And that is the decade by decade historical exhibit that is, basically a trip through time and a trip down Route 66 from the 1920s to the present day.
I like the idea of miniature golf. The thing that I get out of this is it's a great way to inspire a road trip, instill in people a hunger to want to see more, to get out there and do this.
That's exactly what we're hoping to do. When I talk to people, I'm in Arizona, today with you, and California yesterday, and we're talking to people in Illinois and Missouri and all up and down the route. And what I say to everybody is that in a given year, the Route 66 Road Fest represents Route 66 for maybe 3, 6, 9 days total, but the real route is out there 365 days a year. And what we really want to accomplish is have people go through our journey, see what the route was like during all those different decades, get to the very last one, which is the 90s to today, which really speaks to the revival and the refurbishing and all the great stuff that's going on the route right now, and get people in their cars. We want to get people excited enough about this to get in their cars and go see the route for themselves.
That's the idea, because Route 66, to borrow something from Marie Antoinette, today I think Route 66 is better than ever. You can have your cake and eat it too. If you're in a hurry, you jump on the interstate. And if you want to have fun, you take Route 66. And I think the highway is actually today more popular than any time in its history.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And not just in this country. I was in Scotland in 2019, and I walked into a bookstore, a very small bookstore, and I was looking around, and the guy behind the counter asked me if he could help with anything. And when I answered, he said, "Oh, you're from the States?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, where are you from?" And I have my standard answer where I say Oklahoma, and then I immediately follow that with, "It's right above Texas," because most everybody knows where Texas is. And I said Oklahoma, and before I could get to my Texas bit, the guy said, "Anywhere near Tulsa?" And I said, well, I was born and raised in Tulsa, lived there most of my life. How in the world do you know Tulsa, Oklahoma? And he said, 3 or 4 years ago, my brother and I decided to do Route 66. And so we flew over to Chicago and rented a car. We drove the whole route and we spent the night in Tulsa and had a great time. And we just loved it there. And I thought, wow, this is bizarre. And this was before I was even working on this project. It was just one of those things that, being a Tulsan, being, born and raised there, you're just aware the route's part of our DNA, and I would not call myself someone that was obsessed with the route back then, but certainly knew about it and understood the basics. And but it really just kind of drove home, wow, this is a big deal everywhere. And then at the festival last year, I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people that were walking through and looking at things. And I talked to a guy from Germany that came over with his brother and did a similar trip, and met a waitress in a diner somewhere in Oklahoma. And he finished his trip and went back, stayed in touch with this girl, and ended up coming back, and they got married. And so this guy's probably in his 30s or 40s. So it's amazing. It's such an iconic piece of America, and really kind of symbolizes, I think, that Americana period that people really romanticize about this country elsewhere.
It's kind of like, the American experience, distilled, refined, and purified. It's just the absolute essence. And like yesterday in Needles, we had that gentleman from the Mojave tribe performing Native American traditional songs.
That was so cool. Yeah.
It's such a rich and colorful and diverse tapestry. And one of the things about the Road Fest, I think, that's so important, we have a tendency to see Route 66 in the context of neon and tail fins. And it's so important to what you're doing there. Bring in the 20s, the 30s, and show this as a tangible link to the past, the crossroads of the past, present, and future, if you will. And
Yeah, I think as you and I have talked about over the last couple of days, I'm a very admitted history nerd, and so I just love history. If I have an opportunity to read a book, I'm reading a history book. And I think that it's a real shame that a lot of people would not identify themselves that way. But I think deep down it's in there, and I think that the connecting point, just like the gentleman that you were talking about that was there yesterday, it's about people. It's about connecting to human stories. It's not memorizing dates and times and places. It's about the people that were involved and what motivated them and how it affected others. And so, as part of what we're trying to do to make the journey as immersive as we possibly can, we have two period costumed actors that are inside each one of our decades, and these actors do their research, and they know what was going on the route at that time, and how their character would have interacted with that. And so there is a one-on-one. I mean, these people are fantastic at approaching someone and sharing the story and kind of helping kickstart the interest in everything else that's in that exhibit, if they see someone that's maybe not honed in right away. And I think that just speaks to, again, it's that human connection. In order to really get the importance of it, you really got to kind of connect to a person or people during that time to get the emotional connection.
yeah, that's the difference. The mom and pop businesses, the small towns, the Norman Rockwell feel, US 650, 12, all of these roads have that, but it's the people. Yeah, Route 66, it's the passion, the vibrancy. It's I don't have I hate to use the word magic, but it has a magic ability to transcend barriers of language and culture. I've sat down with people who spoke almost no English from Japan and had an absolutely entertaining evening, with the common denominator being simply Route 66.
Yeah, yesterday at the Needles event, I had a chance, like I said, to talk to so many people, and it was really different conversations, each one of them, and I think that's part of what's so cool about it. But I think we talked about kind of the going back in time and that Americana and all of that feel, but the great thing about it is that those kind of people are still out there. I had a guy come up to me yesterday and was telling me a story. He's from California. He was doing the route on motorcycle a few years ago, and in Oklahoma, he he ran into one of the storms that we have so frequently during the spring and fall, and literally tornado warning kind of stuff. And he pulled off the road and ended up at a place where some people took him into a building, fed him, let him hang out. They were intermittently being able to like get out of there and run home, and they literally said, "Hey, the keys are over there. Turn off the lights and lock up when it's over with. Have a safe trip." And I mean, that's one of those things that that's, you mentioned Mayberry earlier. That's such a Mayberry thing, but that happened just a few years ago, and so I think the character and the vibe of the route is still alive. You just got to get out there and get in contact with it personally.
You do, and the quirkiness. We were talking about Louis Keene from Uranus. There's so much of this that's still it is the people taking the time to experience that. Sit down, listen to people in a cafe, strike up a conversation, and I think part of the popularity of Route 66, in fact, a large part, is probably rooted in this. We have all this social media. You have 500 friends on Facebook, and not one of them do you really know or would you even want to have coffee with. It's sterile, it's generic. But you get together at the Blue Swallow Motel, the Midpoint Cafe, and you strike up a conversation, and the next thing you know, you're traveling down the road and you meet the same people later in Kingman or Needles, and it becomes, for lack of a better word, an extended family.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, I keep going back to this event, but this trip has been really transformative. Seems like a heavy word, but it really has been for me in a couple of different ways. And one of them is, getting to meet you and talk to you face to face. Mike Ward, who, I exchanged emails with for the better part of a year. I mean, he loaned me some vintage maps that I scanned and used in designing part of my exhibit, but I'd never met him face to face, and it was amazing. And the other part of it too, that, I'm from Oklahoma, I'm from the Plains, and I have family in Chicago. So that part of the route I know very well. And in the past, I've been to as far west as Amarillo, but this trip is the farthest west I've been in relation to the route. And it just strikes you, the geography. I was driving yesterday and talking to a friend on the phone, and I said, it's crazy. I've been places with mountains before, but when I'm driving and I'm looking around, and it's like they're 360 degrees. Like, when I'm in Denver, I know where the mountains are. They're over there, but here the mountains are all around you, and it's a totally different landscape. The geography is different. The rocks, the dirt, everything is different. And I think, people, especially coming from Europe or the East Coast, when they travel the route, you think about what Chicago looks like, and then that slow transition from, Chicago, St. Louis, and now you're in Oklahoma, and you're going through, and it's like then you hit the Southwest, and you're really, and then you end up at the ocean, right? And you couldn't really see a better cross section of this country than this road. I mean, it's just a kind of a perfect snapshot that kind of carries you through the breadth and the scope of what the country really is. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, and that stretch that yesterday going up through Oatman, that's kind of partial to me because that's where I learned to drive. I got my first job, but I tease people that a one-eyed blind man is not going to take a bad photograph out there. It's stunning. And one of the things that just shocks me about that road when I drive it, I was doing some research on a project a few years ago, and 1939, the Arizona Highway Department, in a calendar year, clocked 1 million vehicles on that road.
Wow.
And I just, that's just beyond comprehension to think that was an endless stream of traffic on that narrow, twisted road.
Well, it's funny, when I told everybody in Needles that I was making that drive yesterday when that event ended, everybody was like, "Oh man, you're going to love this. It's so," and everybody tried to describe it. And I've seen, countless photos, and when I actually came out the backside, like the drive up is cool, but once you come out the backside and you're headed towards Kingman, it was unbelievable. It was so far beyond what I pictured by people's, descriptions. And I did, I pulled off and took a lot of those pictures. So I hope your theory is correct and I have some good ones, but you just can't tell the story with the photo. And that's a perfect example of what we're trying to do with the Road Fest. I can put the best photos of Oatman and that road that have ever been taken, and it doesn't come close to touching the experience of actually driving it. I mean, it was just amazing.
Yeah, well, it's like the Grand Canyon itself. It doesn't matter how good a photographer is or how much of a talent the artist has. There's certain things you have to experience. It's just you have to just flat experience it. And you picked a great time. Yesterday, the weather in Needles is absolutely perfect. When I was a kid, we used to jokingly refer to that as needless California because it is. I've been out here so long. I'm one of the dry roasted nuts. I don't own a short sleeve shirt. I'm a desert rat. But that river country, you get down there in Needles come July and August. It's not hell, but if you squint hard, you can see it from there. I guarantee you, it's just flat hot. And when I made my presentation yesterday down there about Edsel Ford, I was sharing people would stay there at the El Garces, and it was so hot they would put the beds out on the patios upstairs. You just
Yeah,
couldn't.
I saw some photos of that. That was amazing.
Yeah, you just can't sleep when it's 125 degrees.
Well, I obviously very luckily stumbled into the perfect moment, I guess, because the weather's been spectacular. I mean, of course, when I left Tulsa, it was, low 40s and rain and drizzle. So,
Yeah,
but I mean, it's been perfect for me. So I haven't even worn a coat since I've been here, and it's fantastic. So,
that's what we want. The Road Fest. I tell you what, I'm so excited by this project because we really need this. We need this great awakening. Uh, COVID. There was a silver lining to this. Most of the Route 66 enthusiasm, depending on who you talk to and the numbers you get, but probably anywhere from 60 to 80% of the Route 66 travelers have been internationals. But with COVID, Americans rediscovered the road trip, and RV sales went off the charts, and families were traveling and camping. Bicycling became a big thing again, and Route 66 is the centerpiece of that. And as we get closer to the centennial, the Road Fest will play an even more vital role into igniting a passion for road trips in general, but putting the spotlight back on Route 66.
yeah, I think you're right. It's hard to put a positive spin on a pandemic, but if there is one, I think you're spot on. And I think that the timing, the relationship between that time period and how close we are now to the centennial, it's given us the platform to really start doing this at a level that I don't know that we would have been able to otherwise. And when AAA came to SRO Productions, the company I work for, and said, "Hey, we want to create this celebration of Route 66, and we want to keep it, building to the centennial." That happened back in, I guess it was the fall winter of 2019 when we started working on this, and the initial one was supposed to take place in 2021, and obviously the pandemic had other ideas on that, but it enabled us to kind of refine some things, and our plan is to expand each year up to the centennial and really try to cover the whole route then. So we're hoping and looking into and hoping to be able to do a road fest in Amarillo and possibly in Springfield, Illinois in 2024. And then, we want to just keep growing from there and, gradually adding in Missouri. And I'm sitting here in Kingman today with plans tomorrow to look around and with an eye on seeing if there's a place here where we can do one. And that's really, we want to take this thing out on the road, and we want people to, as many eyeballs as we can get on this thing, the better. And so we're really hoping that in the centennial year that we'll be able to, do events from Illinois all the way across to the pier. So
I've been one of the things I've been trying to do the last couple of years is take the show on the road and off the road. I've been speaking a lot. Uh, Recently, I was down in Apache Junction, Arizona, speaking about Route 66 in Arizona, and taking the show off and trying to draw another crowd into the road itself. But doing this along the road. Well, we talked about Kingman here, for example. Some of these towns are so. This is another thing. They're ideally situated to attract attention. Here in Kingman, we're 36 hours from Chicago by Amtrak. We're 180 miles from Phoenix, 100 miles from Las Vegas, and 360 miles from the Los Angeles metropolitan area. So it makes a great day trip.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways to look at it, and after 26, all things going well, it'd be great to be able to take the Road Fest to places, to Atlanta or Detroit or New York or places that are not on the route, but still obviously have people who know about it enough to come and appreciate it. But I think that the one of the beautiful things about doing it along the route as we build up to the centennial is the idea that you can come to our event and experience the route at the same time. And so if you live in Tulsa, maybe after you do the Tulsa event in 23, you go, oh, they're going to be in Amarillo. I've never been there. I haven't driven that stretch yet. So let's go to this thing again and let's go to Amarillo this time. And, the same thing coming from the other direction. Maybe there's some people from New Mexico that decide to journey over to the Amarillo version. And so, you could actually experience some of the route in its true form and then get the Road Fest experience all in the same trip, which is great.
Yeah, it is. I agree keeping this on the road for the centennial, but I jumping ahead a bit, like you said, taking it to Detroit, make the exhibit focused on Route 66, but just generally on the Great American Road Trip in general.
Hmm.
It'd be kind of fun. Tulsa is fast becoming, well, Oklahoma in general, the entire state, but Tulsa specifically is becoming the poster child for how to revitalize a community using Route 66, how to generate interest. Those folks are starting to find a way to sell everything on the hog, including the squeal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to see. Like I said, growing up there, I was born there and lived there most of my life, and you just knew that about it. You knew it was there, and I never really had anybody in my family pull me aside and give me a history lesson on it. But we knew about it. We knew it was there, and it's always been acknowledged. And you've seen a few things in a gift shop here or there, but what's going on right now, it really is amazing. I mean, we've got things like the Mother Road Market, which is an amazing, food hall and has retail built around that, and they're expanding that section. And you've got, people like Mary Beth Babcock with Buck Adams. That's an amazing place and really embodies the vibe and the feel of the route. You've got what William Franklin has done right across the street from there with Decapolis. He's got an amazing, setup there, and just up and down. There's really just great stuff. The Campbell Hotel, which of course has been there forever, but it's back up and going strong, and it's just you see all of these businesses starting to pop up and revitalize that corridor there on 11th Street and into what they're now calling the Meadow Gold District. It's really cool to see, and it has always been a part of our identity, but I think it's starting to take on another level of importance now that's just really great. And we've got our buddy Reese is there with the association doing great stuff, and Ken Busby with the Alliance there doing amazing things, and we're just very fortunate to have the history and be able to leverage it in the way that we are and really kind of bring that attention to Tulsa.
Yeah, Tulsa, the neon sign initiative is, I think that's something communities could easily emulate. The Campbell Hotel is quite a story. Some years ago, I met the people who took that over and brought it back to life. And some of the photos they had was, oh my gosh, I tell you. Apparently, that was a hotel only for a short period in the 20s, as I understand. And then it was the downstairs was gutted, converted to a supermarket, the offices and apartments upstairs, and then it was abandoned. And when they started the renovation, there was places upstairs where the pigeon droppings were 2 feet thick on the floor.
God.
And I can't imagine taking on a project of that magnitude.
Yeah, that's quite an undertaking. I got the tour of the El Garces yesterday, and it kind of reminded me. I've been a few places along the route now. There is a hotel, which unfortunately the name is escaping me, in Elk City, that I was fortunate enough to get a tour of about a year and a half ago, and it's very similar to these other places that we're talking about. And it's just these amazing places with great architecture and really good bones, and just something you could just see in your mind. You can picture how it must have been to walk into one of those lobbies in the past. And where I was set up at the Needles event, right outside my window was that beautiful courtyard area with the fountain where the train pulls right up. And it's so easy to imagine what that would have been like back in the early part of the 1900s to get off a train there, and the impression that would make when you're walking off of that train into Needles. And so there's so many great buildings along the way, and I hope that everything we're talking about will lead to some of those being brought back to life in a great way to celebrate the architecture and the vibe and the towns themselves.
It's a challenge, I mean, the economics of it sometimes make it impossible. It just doesn't work. But I mentioned yesterday when we were talking. I'll send you a link. But a gentleman named Nolan Stoltz, his work has been most fascinating. And not only has he been rediscovering some of these totally forgotten towns, but he has also been staying in a lot of these old places that are now Airbnb, and he's been tracking down lodging, trying to get the feel of what it was like in the 20s and the 30s. And real fascinating fellow. I'll send you some information on that.
Yeah, I'm dying to see some of that stuff. It sounds incredible, and that's the kind of adventure that that really appeals to me. One of the really cool things, maybe my favorite thing. It's hard to say. It's like picking your favorite child, but one of my favorite parts of the Road Fest is in the 1950s. We have a two-wall area where we're displaying these photographs that were taken by Charles and Irene Custer back in the 1950s. And I read about this in the Chicago paper, and I think it was the Sun Times, and um, these photographs are unbelievable. And it's like, you see there's so many photos of the route through all the different time periods, but the thing that's incredible about these particular photos is they have people in them. And so they would go into a small town, and they would walk into the barber shop and say, hey, we're going to take these photos. And they would get the barbers to pose in the shop, or a dress shop, or a car garage. And so beyond the setting and the building and the business, you're actually seeing these humans. Again, it's that human component where you look at those people and you can just imagine having a conversation with them. And I was so fortunate I tracked down their son, Charlie, who lives out in Northern California. And we were able to not only get permission to use the photographs, and we put a lot of them, close to 100 of them, up on the walls. But we were also fortunate enough for him to send me the actual camera that they used to take these photos. It's an old wooden box camera. I mean, it was even antiquated at the time that they were using it, but they used it because it had an element of drama to it. And this couple was incredible. And obviously, we don't have time to go into the whole story, but it's amazing. Come to the Road Fest and you could read about the story on the wall. But these people were amazing, entrepreneurial, adventurous people, and they really were selling this experience. And you can see it. The way that Charlie tells it is that his mom, Irene, was the one who, would charm the people into staying in the photographs, because usually they wouldn't want to be in them, and Charles would then take the photos. But, that's, again, there's just all these little stories and all these bits and pieces that it's just never ending. I mean, I researched before putting the exhibit together, about 2.5 years of research before I started writing and designing the walls. And I haven't even scratched the surface. I mean, every time I think I've kind of got my arms wrapped around it, I meet somebody like you, and I'm like, oh man, I have so far to go now.
Well, God, the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know. An example was the story with Edsel Ford. I had no idea until 2015 when the Historic Vehicle Association contacted me about this trip they were planning. And here's a whole nother rabbit hole I found myself wandering around down.
Yeah, they're kind of endless. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm dying to look through that binder that you had the other day. So hopefully you'll bring that with you today when we go roaming around. But yeah, I mean, I didn't know that story. It's amazing, and I love the fact that I mean, what was your quote that you wouldn't take your Jeep out onto that?
Oh no, I would have to do some serious drinking to take my Jeep in some of the places. And to think that these guys, the year 1915 when Edsel Ford did this, he was one of about 20,000 people that went to that California exposition by automobile from outside the state. And it's just, it's, I've driven Model T Fords, and the thought of driving cross country and through the sand and the desert in the middle of summer, oh, boy, I tell you what.
Yeah, my little rental Camry that I'm driving on this trip yesterday, as I was winding down from Oatman, I thought, man, I cannot even fathom what it would have been like in some of the cars of the past, and not only because of the handling and the tires and all of that technology, but I was thinking about specifically about like the 40s when the cars were ginormous.
Yeah.
About as narrow a 2-lane road as I've ever driven on, and there's no guardrail. So
It's amazing that remained the road until 1952.
yeah,
Uh,
it's really incredible. It's the most amazing drive I've made. I can tell you that.
it's pretty slick. Hey, Wade, thank you for doing this morning, and I sure hope we've encouraged people to come to the Road Fest in Tulsa, and I hope we've encouraged people to get out on the road. And speaking of encouragement to get out there, I need to give a shout out to our good friends in Tucumcari, New Mexico. You can check out a lot of the great things they have to offer at Visit Tucumcari E&M. And a lot of people know Tucumcari because of its great motels, Route 66 time capsules, the 1930s Blue Swallow Motel, the 1959 Motel Safari, and the 1964 Roadrunner Lodge. But if you take a little time and wander around Tucumcari, it's full of surprises. I don't know if have you been to Tucumcari, Wade?
Not yet. That's got to be my next trip. I thought I was going to get it on this one, but the plans changed, and so I'm not going to be able to. So it's very high on the list now.
Well, when you get there, I'll facilitate an introduction to Connie Loveland. She's just a wonderful person there with Tucumcari Main Street. But just an example of one of the surprises in Tucumcari is the Mesa Lands Community College Dinosaur Museum. It's a nondescript building a couple blocks off Route 66, and it's small, but it will shock you because it is Smithsonian quality
Wow.
paleontology museum. They do they invite people to come along for a week-long dig every summer, and that's another way to enhance a Route 66 adventure, I suppose.
I need to stock up on some sunscreen and take advantage of that.
Wade, thank you very much, and we'll see you in a bit.
Sounds great. Thanks.
You bet. My friends, thank you for joining us this morning. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it inspires you to take a trip to Tulsa this summer. And, well, we'll see you on the road. And if not, we'll see you next Sunday morning. Take care, my friends. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a 2-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
My friends, until we meet next Sunday morning, take care, travel safe, and enjoy the adventure. Vaya con Dios, mi amigos.